welcome to today's episode of Focus Atlanta. I am your host, Keisha Lanceland. Thanks so much for tuning in with us this Sunday afternoon. In our first segment, we're going to talk a little bit about how to be good digital citizens. And I'm here with Justin Daniels. Justin, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, first of all, can we talk a little bit about what we're doing wrong? Is that a good way to kind of approach this?
We can approach it however we need to, but it's an important topic.
All right, then what are we doing wrong in terms of what kind of digital citizens we are?
I think where we have kind of wandered off the reservation a little bit is we've really lost critical thinking. I think in the last 20 years, we have got all this technology, all this information is available to us. And I think one of the unanticipated consequences is it's made us kind of intellectually lazy. Hey, if I just download this and I read it off the internet, it must be correct. And the reality is there's so much information out there. They're really not journalistic standards on all these platforms. So it means the spread of misinformation has just accelerated at a dizzying pace.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, then let's jump right into it. How do we become better digital citizens?
I think where we have to start is it has to be a shift in mindset. And it's what I said, is how do we start to re-inject critical thinking into what content and information that we are consuming? And I think it's two things. One, I think it's curiosity. And two, it's healthy skepticism. Meaning we should be open to taking in a wide range of viewpoints, but at the same time being skeptical, saying, is this particular source one that I should rely on? Where is its information coming from? Is it just an echo chamber for a certain perspective? And that's where I think you have this intersection of curiosity and skepticism that really has to come together to really be critically thinking about the type of content that we look at, we read, that we rely on, that shapes how we view the world.
Okay, it seems like perhaps, well, from the outside looking in, this is kind of new, right? Is this something that we've kind of been falling into this pattern for a while? Is this something that maybe because of how much we're using, the internet, it is kind of new per se? What kind of trend are we seeing and how quickly can we kind of get out of it?
I think what's happened in the last 25 or 30 years, especially since the invention of the iPhone in 2007, is we worship convenience. And that has become such a focal point of how we live our lives because technology enables convenience. We can hail a ride, we can order food, it comes to our doorstep. And so I think one of the byproducts of that worshiping of convenience is we've lost the ability a little bit to really critically evaluate and analyze information because it's so readily available. Oh, it must be true. It's so easy to get. And because we focus on how easy it is to obtain and review that information, we're not using the skill of, well, is this trustworthy information? Is this information we should rely on? Because to do that is to critically evaluate something. And that's not very convenient. It takes hard work and effort.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I got to say, it's clearly across the board. It's not something that just kids are doing. I mean, adults are doing it. Everybody's doing it. But is there I don't know, is there a great starting point or a great age range where we really start to drill into our students, our kids? Like, listen, you can't believe everything you see. You got to dig deep. You got to do a little research. Like, what have you, is there any gauge in terms of when we can start really pushing this message so that as they become adults, they don't do what we're seeing adults do today?
And Keisha, I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned students and you mentioned schools. I think one of the things that schools need to be thinking is how do we have a whole class with age appropriate content so we start educating our kids when they're young about what does appropriate digital citizenship mean in the 21st century. And it should start from the time they're in kindergarten up through and including high school with a real emphasis on how do we critically evaluate the kinds of information that we're getting? How do we think through it carefully? Because raising kids and good digital citizen, it takes a village. And so it's primarily incumbent upon us as parents, but also I think schools need to be reevaluating their curriculum and really emphasizing how do we bring critical thinking back into our classroom, especially in how we're using technology and digital media, particularly when we're about to have artificial intelligence go mainstream and that weaponizes misinformation, malinformation, and makes it really more difficult to really figure out what's legitimate and what's not.
Wow, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. This is critically important in terms of where we go from here. Like you said, we've gotten to a point where we gotta back away from it. And how do we do that? Where do we go? Where do we start? Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we can all be better digital citizens. Take the opportunity to think about it. Do some critical thinking, and especially when it comes to your kids, especially when it comes to our students. We really need to start drilling down this type of knowledge so that we're not just flying, off the handle with misinformation and being poor digital citizens. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to this segment of Focus Atlanta. We'll be right back with more.